Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today, we're going to be having a look at some more Planet Zoo mods. Of course, we've got part 70 of our Planet Zoo mods playlist that we've got going on. So that's really awesome. We got 70, and we've still got a couple more to go before the next update. So today we're going to be having a look at a bunch of different fish mods, but not just by Buffzoo this time in Leaf. There is the start of this new pack called the Aquaria pack, so it's going to have all sorts of really cool aquarium fish and other marine animals and stuff like that. It's a really interesting pack that's been made by Gen, Leaf, and Buffzoo. It's kind of like the revolution of like all the aquatic mods, and some of them, as you can see here, look pretty good, and we'll go through them pretty soon. And today we're going to be starting off with the Common Remora by Gen, Leaf, Buffzoo from the Aquaria pack. So we've got these wonderful little guys here. So look how wonderfully awesome these little guys are. So this is the Common Remora, and these guys are a really interesting fish as we'll get into. They, as you can see, they're kind of that black, brown or grey in colour. And in terms of their total length, they can reach about 86.4 centimetres, or about 34 inches in total length. But they mostly don't really get bigger than 40 centimeters, so that's or 16 inches, so that's kind of their maximum weight, and the maximum length, and their maximum known weight's a little over a kilogram, or about 2.4 pounds. And they kind of have this really interesting symbiotic relationship. As you can see, these guys have this large suction cup on their head, which creates a vacuum, and that allows them to stick onto larger animals such as whales, dolphins, sharks, and sea turtles. So these guys often have a symbiotic relationship with these guys. So these guys don't really have a negative impact on their host. And what happens is that the host can provide the Remora with like a safe place to live. So being around a large animal obviously helps protection. Also, the large animal moving across the ocean will help the smaller Remora around it kind of disperse better. They also will have constant fast-moving water going through their gills, and they also have a steady flow of food from the scraps from the larger animal. And the benefit that these guys give to their larger hosts, such as whales, dolphins, things like that, they often will feed on some of its parasites, and they often will last and staying up for their hosts with over 3 months. So they're very they don't really stick with one host for too long, maybe about a couple months. And during this time, they can move from the attached side if it feels threatened. So they're kind of, if they feel like they're threatened, they can release the suction from the suction cup or the vacuum, and then kind of just duck out where they want. And they cannot survive in still water, so they need that water to flow from their through their gills, like a lot of pelagic fish. But these guys are really cool. These guys are particularly common in warm marine waters, not reptiles, as seen in like the Western Mediterranean and the Atlantic, and also the North Sea as well. And in terms of reproduction, they may stay attached to the same host and have host fidelity. So it's not clear which part of the year they spawn, and little is known about the reproductive behavior, which is very interesting. And they often will eat the food scraps from the host, but they'll also eat things like plankton and parasitic copepods. So they're kind of like giant cleaner rats, pretty much, that they're not related. The significance to humans is not necessarily no negative impact known, and they can be caught in fish bycatch and also put in aquaria, and they have been used for fishing, and usually they wait for larger fish. And other names for these guys are often called like suckerfish, the shark sucker, the brown sucker, or these shark pilots. So quite a common fish, as you can see by the name, and really interesting evolution. And this flat head really gives them a distinct look and allows them to hang out with the big animals. As you often see in documentaries, big whales and stuff with lots of these little fish around them, they're most likely remoras or pilot fish. So really cool. That was again done by Leaf, Gen, and Buffzoo for the Aquaria pack. Next we've got another animal from the Aquaria pack, and then we'll be moving on to some more weird and wild animals. So next we have got the Atlantic Spadefish. So let's have a look at these wonderful guys here. So the Atlantic Spadefish is a species of marine fish that belongs to the family Epididae, and they're kind of found a lot in North Carolina in aquariums. These guys, as you can see, are very tall and compressed, and they're also known by like a lot of other names such as angelfish, moonfish, ocean cobbler, things like that. And you can see they're quite tall bodies. They have these really distinctive stripes to them as well. There's generally 4 to 6 of these bands going down their body. And the first one running through the eye, and the last one on the caudal fin there. And you can see the mouth here is pretty small, with the maxilla and the adults ending between the nostrils, so you can see it's quite small there. The teeth are small and bush-like, and there's no real teeth at the roof of the mouth, and the heads of fins are covered with these scales, and specimens typically get between 3 to 10 pounds, or 1.4 to 4.5 kilograms, though individuals as large as 20 pounds, or 9.1 kilograms, have been recorded, with a maximum length of about 36 inches, or about 91 centimeters. So in terms of their diet, they typically feed on things such as small benthic invertebrates, that includes like cnidarians, crustaceans, mollusks, annelids, types of worms, things like that, and they'll also feed on plankton in the water column. And in terms of their habitat, they're endemic to the western Atlantic Ocean, so they're typically found off the coast of the southeastern United States, from as far north as Massachusetts, to the Gulf of Mexico and into the Caribbean, and then can be found in Bermuda and the eastern coast of Brazil. And they typically live in marine to brackish waters and subtropical climates, and they are common along the shallow water of shorelines between 3 to 35 meters deep, or 9.8 to 114.8 feet deep. And juveniles will commonly inhabit estuaries until they are mature enough, and adults prefer mangroves, beaches, and harbors. So in terms of their reproduction or life cycle, spawning seems to occur from May to September, with the female producing up to 1 million eggs per season, and these eggs will hatch after 24 hours, and the larvae feed on the yolk for 2 days before they start actively feeding, which is most likely things like zooplankton, things like that for these guys. And they don't have much commercial value, but they are strong fighting fish, so a lot of anglers tend to like them, so they're popular game fish, especially during the summer months where they're the most active. And they're a popular target species for sports fishermen because they are abundant and they have a strong fight for their size. They're actually pretty good to eat too. They're good table fare, especially if they're smoked or grilled, and it's the most typical way of catching them. It uses small pieces of clam or a small circle hook. So yeah, another really cool fish done by Leaf Jen and Buffzoo. Really awesome to see much more fish, and it's almost like these guys got a little bit of a revolution, so they look so much nicer than they used to be, and I'm really excited to see what else comes from all the fish mods and things like that. Really, really awesome. So because I'm a big fish fan. Look at these wonderful guys. So next we got one just done by Leaf and Jen this time. Jen, who's really taking over this mod spotlight this week, or today at least. Really some fun mods here. We've got the Patagonian Mara, so really cute guys here. So they're a pretty large rodent. They're one of the largest rodents, and they're also known as the Patagonian cavy or the delaberry. And these guys are herbivores, as you can see here, and somewhat rabbit-like. There's a lot of convergence there. These guys typically live in the open to semi-open habitats of Argentina, including Patagonia, large parts of Patagonia. And a population has been recorded in the northern United Arab Emirates, potentially as a population of escaped individuals. And they are monogamous and breed in warrens shared by several pairs, which is pretty cool. So these guys pretty much look like a jackrabbit here with these long limbs, which is really weird for a rodent. And they have almost like hoof-like feet, and they have digits on them that they allow to like dig and stuff like that. And they have a white underside with orange flanks and chin, as you can kind of see here, and a white face. And the average Patagonian Mara has a head-to-body length of about 69 to 75 centimeters, or 27 to 30 inches. And they have a tail about 4 to 5 centimeters, or 1.6 to 2 inches. They typically weigh between 8 to 16 kilograms, or 18 to 35 pounds. And unlike most cavids, such as guinea pigs and capybaras, the anal glands of the Mara are actually between the anus and at the base of the tail, rather than being anterior to the anus, so that's pretty interesting. And these guys are typically now only found in Argentina, and from about 28 degrees to 50 degrees latitude, I think. And they also live with, they like habitats with lots of scrub cover, but they also live in the overgrazed and barren soils of the Monte Desert. And in northwestern Argentina, they probably inhabit lowlands and places like that. And you can see they're quite well adapted for like living in the open plains with the long legs and stuff like that. The term for that is a cursorial lifestyle, which is pretty interesting. As I mentioned, these guys are primarily herbivorous, so they eat almost... They're actually pretty comparable to like deers and antelopes, so they typically eat like lots of green fruit and vegetation, things like that, even grazing. And they're primarily diurnal, so that means they will spend most of their day kind of feeding and running around, and that can depend a lot. And their preferred temperatures is about 20 degrees or 68 degrees Fahrenheit to hang around in. And females spend more time feeding than the males, due to their gestation and lactation, and the males spend most of the day sitting and being vigilant for predators. And the predators of these guys can include animals such as felids, gersons, foxes, and birds of prey. And adults can be hosts for a bunch of different parasites. So these guys have very interesting social structures as well. They have a unique combination of monogamy and communal breeding. So they're monogamous, so pairs will kind of pair up for life, with replacement of partners only occurring after the other partners die, so that's what happens. And the male is actually almost so responsible for maintaining the pair by following the female where she goes. The male marks his female with urine and stuff like that to say, hey, this is my girl. And pairs will breed together or with other pairs at warrens that can have up to 29 pairs. So the maras will breed at least in southern Argentina from August to January in these large warrens. So that's really cool social. We'll have a look at the babies while we're talking about them. Look at these cute little guys. How adorable. So gestation for these guys in the wild lasts about 100 days, and most births occur between September and October when the summer dry season and after the winter rains. The female produces about 1 litter each year in the wild, but they can produce as many as 4 in captivity. And young can be born, they're born precocial, so they're pretty much able to walk and run the moment they're born. So they also, dens are dug in the breeding season as well, and litters from 1 to 22 pairs can be grouped in these dens. This communal living also provides protection from predators and also a high survival rate, since there's more eyes looking for babies, and also more babies like predators and things. For predators to eat, so even if predators could get a few, there'd still be a lot of babies there. And the female may sometimes nurse the young of another pair as well, and even some will mix around and do things like that, but they do not actively cooperate in raising the young. And for the first 3 weeks, the young will remain near the den, and at this time, distance between individuals is low, where they kind of cuddle and play all together, and then they are weaned at about 13 weeks of age. And also, they're quite a vocal species. They make all sorts of vocalizations while they're grazing or moving slowly, like a wheat sound and all sorts of different little sounds that these guys have got going on, and things like that. But in terms of the conservation, they're considered near threatened, so they're quite common in most areas, so they're not like in desperate danger of extinction. But in some areas they have been extirpated because many are killed for use for bedspreads and rugs, but they especially with hunting and habitat alteration has affected some areas. They're gone extinct in places such as the Buenos Aires province, so there could be some reintroduction efforts if people will it so. But look at these cute little guys, aren't they so cute and adorable? Big fan of these little maras here. Jen did a wonderful job, and next we got another monkey. Oh, not a monkey, no. We have got the North American porcupine. I can't believe I missed that out by Frazzle. This is one I've been wanted to show off for a while, but I keep crashing my game. But it's so awesome that I can finally see these guys. So another rodent today. We've got the North American porcupine, which is also known as the Canadian porcupine, are a large quilled covered rodent, as you can see here, and they're from the New World porcupine family, which is not related to the Old World porcupine family. Distantly related, and they are the second largest rodent in North America, second only to the North American beaver. And these guys migrated from South America, where all New World porcupines kind of evolved, so they're kind of the last one there. Look how cute these guys are. Aren't they absolutely adorable? And in terms of their description, these guys, you can see they're usually dark brown or grey with these white highlights here. And as I mentioned, they're the second largest North American rodent after the beaver. They reach a head to body length of about 60 to 90 centimeters, or about 2 to 3 feet. And that does not count the 14 to 30 centimeter tail, that's 5 to 11 inches. The hind foot length's about like 5 to 9 centimeters, and their typical weights can range from 3.5 to about 18 kilograms, or 7 to 39 pounds. With adults, adult females typically get about 7 kilograms or 15 pounds, while wild-caught males average about 10 kilograms or about 23 pounds. And they're actually the only native North American mammal with antibiotics in its skin. So these antibiotics prevent infection when the porcupine falls from a tree or is struck by another one with its quills. And because they fall out of trees often, this kind of becomes like a very interesting, a very important adaptation. And actually fall out of trees quite often. And the porcupine, the wolverine, and the skunk are actually the only North American mammals that have strongly contrasting black and white coloration. and because they are the only mammals from benefit the other animals know that where they are and what they are during the darkest of nights. That's pretty interesting. And the most distinguishing, obviously, feature of these guys is their massive quills. So a porcupine can have up to about, an adult at least, can have up to 30,000 quills that cover its body, except its underbelly, face, and feet. And these quills are modified hairs that are like sharp and barbed and hollow, and they're used primarily for defense. And usually they're normally flat across the body, but when they're threatened, they can use small muscles to kind of put them up and say, "Ooh, don't look at me, don't eat me, I'm big and dangerous and angry." And then they can often shoot you with barbs if they come too close, and can be pretty difficult to remove. And they also have a pretty strong odor, which is used to warn predators and tell them to go away. And it smells, described similarly to human body odor, goats, and some cheeses. But it's like a big way to try and say, "Hey, get away from me! I'm not here to be messed with." And their distribution, they are very, very widespread. They can be found, range from Canada and the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia and Maryland. And in the west, they range from Alaska to all the mountains of Mexico, where they typically live in coniferous and mixed forest areas. But they have adapted to these harsh areas such as scrublands and tundras as well. And they also make their dens in hollow trees and lots of rocky areas. Let's see if we can find one running around. Let's have a look at you, you beautiful porcupine. I'm so glad we finally got these in the game. But during the summer, these guys will typically eat twigs, roosts, berries, stems, whatever they can get their mouths around. But in the winter, they would typically eat conifer, needles, or tree bark. And porcupines are selective with their consumption. So, for example, they'll eat like every 1,000 trees in the Catskill Mountains. They'll only eat 1 to 2 linden trees and 1 big-tooth aspen, so that's pretty interesting. They're also quite nearsighted and slow-moving in terms of behavior, and that's mainly because they're mostly active at night or nocturnal, and in summer days they'll often rest in the trees. They do not hibernate, but they sleep in and stay close to their dens in winter, and the strength of the porcupine's defenses actually lets them have the ability to live a social life, unlike many a solitary life, so they don't really have a social life. And they have an extraordinary ability to learn complex mazes and remember them as much as 100 times afterwards. So they're quite, they have a great memory, so that's pretty cool. Are you going to go for a drink? Kind of wish these guys would fly though. I think it's because they're on the beaver. Really, really wonderful animals here. So in terms of their defense, as I mentioned, they have these strong odors, and they get the quills as well. And these predators can include animals like fishes, as I covered a couple spotlights ago, wolverines, coyotes, wolves, black bears, and cougars, as well as humans. And they have actually been known to be preyed upon by golden eagles and horned owls. And they're most at risk from fishes, which can exceed the mass of 5.5 kilograms. And they're able to kind of climb them, chase them into the trees, and force them into the ground. And then sometimes they'll attack the hindquarters as well, like that. And in terms of reproduction, they're solitary for most of the year, except for the breeding season, when that begins, where they will secrete a thick mucus that mixes with their urine, and then the male will find the female and they'll do the estrus thing. And they have a long gestation compared to other rodents. They have an average of about 202 days, and by contrast, the American beaver has about 128 days. And they'll give birth to a single young, and at birth, this young will weigh about 450 grams and increase to nearly 1 kilogram after its first week of life. They do not actually gain their full adult weight until the end of the second season at about 4.5 kilograms. And their quills soon get harder after birth, because that would be pretty painful for mama porcupine. These guys actually have parental care, so for the first 2 weeks of their life, the babies will rely on their mother for their subsistence. And after that, they'll learn to climb and start to eat, and they'll nurse for up to 4 months after being born. And until the mating season, they'll stay with their mothers. And mother porcupines do not defend their young, but they've been known to care for them even after death. In one case, a baby had fallen to its death from a tree, and the mother came down and stayed for offspring span for hours, waiting vainly for it to revive. So that's a pretty sad but cute story, I think. And these actually guys live for really long as well. They can live up to 30 years. And common causes of mortality includes as being obviously eaten by a predator, falling from a tree, or being run over by vehicles. So in terms of their relationship to humans, they're sometimes considered a pest because they often inflict damage to trees and leather and objects and things like that. And they also injure domestic dogs. And in terms of their conservation status, they are considered at least concerned. So they have a pretty extensive range. except for some states and stuff. And there's like remnant populations in north central Mexico, and they live in riparian forests, scrublands, things like that. But in some local areas, because of hunting and habitat loss, they are considered endangered species. Well, they were listed in Mexico, but now they can probably considered fine. And next, we're going to move on to another animal we've got by Gabboi and GiornoPizza. Oh, wait, these porcupines were done by Brazil64. I can't believe I got to mention that, but such a wonderful mod that they've made here. I'm a really big fan, and I'm finally that I'm able to show these porcupines off, because it's really just one of the most impressive mods. I do love this porcupine. Next, we're going to move on, as I mentioned, the Chital by Gabboi and GiornoPizza. Wonderful animals here. We've got a black male here, who's a melanistic. These guys, also known as the spotted deer or the axis deer, these guys are native to India. And they're a moderate-sized deer. They can reach, males can get about 90 centimeters tall, or 35 inches, and females about 70 inch tall, or 28 inches at the shoulder, with males being between 30 to 75 kilograms, or 66 to 165 pounds, with lighter females being between 25 and 45 kilograms, or 55 to 99 pounds. With them being sexually dimorphic, of course, with the males being much larger than the females, and the antlers being present only on the males. And this is obviously a melanistic pattern, so they're all black, but you can see the kind of normal pattern is quite light. It can be much more ginger than this, with lots of small spots that break their outlines. And they have pretty large antlers that can get up to about 1 meter long, so that's pretty cool. I already talked about that in the description. These guys, as I mentioned, found in India. They can be found in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. And their most northern limits are about the foothills of the Himalayas, and they can be found pretty much down south into like the Sri Lanka and like the Nicobar Islands and things like that. But they have been introduced to a lot of places for hunting, such as Australia, United States, and Croatia. And in terms of behavior, they're active during the day, but they spend pretty much in the summer, they'll spend a lot of their mid-afternoons or noons in the shade because it can get quite hot. And activity will peak again once it approaches. And the sun glare is avoided if the temperature reaches about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees Celsius. And they typically forage at this time. They stay motionless and if they see any predators. And the stunts may be adopted by nearby individuals as they kind of feel for predators. And they're quite good leapers. They can leap for about 1.5 meters or 4.9 feet, but they prefer to dive under things, and they will stand within 300 meters of cover, so they typically try to run like that. These guys are pretty gregarious. That means they like to live in herds. They actually form matriarchal herds with females and the offspring, and similar to a lot of other ungulates, there'll be the females, and the oldest female kind of leads the herd and things like that. When these aggregations can get quite large as well, with up to 100 individuals being spotted, though typically it's like up to 15 or 40. It's kind of big ones, but generally they kind of do their own thing. Predators of these guys are pretty common. It includes lions, tigers, wolves, rock pythons, Indian paradogs, dholes, jackals, red foxes, things like that. They'll even eat the juveniles as well. They're also quite vocal. So they'll give out bellows and barks and things as well, and dominant males will often give out growls as well, and things like that. And they mark their territories with like preorbital glands near the eye, where they'll kind of rub branches and stuff on their eyes and kind of say, hey, this is my area, you can smell it. And another interesting relationship is that they form relationships with animals such as langurs and miners, which allow them to better spot prey. So these guys will hang around them, and these guys will move through undergrowth and kind of find insects and things, and then they'll spot prey for the chital to avoid. In terms of diet, they're typically browsers, so they typically eat browsers, but they will eat many grasses during the day. Browse typically forms a major part of their diet during the winter, so October to January, while grass is tall and dried up and no longer palpable. But yeah, really cool guys as well. And in terms of reproduction, it varies a lot. We'll have a look at the babies while I talk about them, like how cute they are. It varies a lot. Their newborns are kind of similar to other deer. These guys will have a rutting season, and males will kind of fight for the females. It's very similar to other deers. And these guys, when they're born, they'll be hidden for about a week. And the period is much shorter than other deer, though. And the mother-fawn bond is not very strong. And if the fawn dies, the mother can breed once again, so they can give birth at least twice a year. The male will continue their growth until 7 8 years old. and their lifespan in captivity is nearly 22 years, though in the wild they'd be lucky to live 5 or 10 years. So in terms of their conservation status, they're considered least concerned because they're very common and widespread, and there's not really big issues, but they believe there could be some issues because of hunting and competition with livestock as well, which has caused some declines and local extinctions in some areas. But in terms of they're not like in danger of extinction at all, but they have been introduced to places such as Argentina, Australia, Mexico, Mississippi, Texas, places like that for hunting, since they're a common species for hunting. So yeah, really, really nice guys. Also done by Gabboi and GiornoPizza. And we've got a new one as well. We've got an extinct animal here. We've got Purussaurus, done by EinBobo. So, new model on the scene. Already done that Wallet's crocodile, but now we've got an extinct crocodile by them. That looks really, really wonderful. How awesome are these guys? So these guys are an extinct genus of giant caiman. So they lived in South America during the Miocene, so about 20 to about 5 million years ago, so in that range. They've been known from the Brazilian and Peruvian Amazon, and a lot of formations there, the Remora formation of northern Venezuela as well. So kind of just that area. The largest individual, the type species, Purussaurus basiliensis, was very, very huge. There's been estimated to get up to sizes about 10 meters and about 5 tons. And even some larger estimates have been about like 12.5 meters or 41 feet long and up to 8 tons. But there's kind of neither here nor there. A range is kind of like from 10 to 12 meters. And there's believed they also had a food intake that needed to be about 40 kilograms of food per day. And they had super strong bite forces, especially because they're being a caiman, they're quite adapted for big things like that. It's been estimated they have a 5-ton bite force, which is pretty interesting. And these guys were probably eating a wide range of animals in its habitat, which made it an apex predator. So these guys would have been preying on a lot of large animals in its ecosystem, especially in South America at the time, with lots of weird and wacky animals, such as some of the interesting xenarthrans and notoungulates, like the toxodonts and things like that. These guys would be eating, with no real competition. And the reason for the extinction is to believe these guys got so big and specialized that they weren't able to change with the climates and stuff like that, especially as it cooled during the end of the Miocene as well. And these guys have quite large teeth as well. They kind of vary from each species. There's 3 different species of Purussaurus, but some of them are kind of backwards and stuff like that, and this indicates these guys were kind of adapted for eating large animals. And these guys, as I mentioned, also one of the large stone crocodilians. They're comparable size to animals like Sarcosuchus and Deinosuchus, but they're much younger, since these guys were kind of found in the late Cretaceous, or just the Cretaceous. These guys are from the Miocene. And also lived with another giant crocodile called Rhamphasuchus, which was much more gharial-like. So these guys, that's a good idea of niche partitioning, since these guys were pretty much adapted to eating larger animals, while Rhamphasuchus was kind of eating a lot of fish. So that's kind of really cool. So in terms of their paleoecology, these guys would have lived with giant giant turtles such as Stupendemes, which was like the largest freshwater turtle, and probably the largest turtle known as well, like 3-meter wide plastrons and things like that. Like huge animals. Live with other crocodiles, sloths, and things like that. There was a relative to capybaras that grew up to 700 kilograms. Perfect prey for these guys. River dolphins as well that would have all probably been eaten by these guys. Other large animals that would have lived with is also Anstrapatheres, which were like these really weird tapir, not tapir things, but they're actually more closely related. They're from a completely extinct group of mammals that were only lived in South America, since South America has been isolated since the time of the dinosaurs. But yeah, really interesting animals there. A really big fan of this Purussaurus. Did a wonderful job behind Bobo. I want to see the baby here, because you see the size difference between the parents and the babies. Look at these such little guys here. And I bet Mama Purussaurus would have been a very good mother, since if you look at modern crocodilians, they're very good mothers. Very, very cute. I'm a big fan. EinBobo's kind of coming on the scene with some really cool new animals here. Let's see if you swim there. You're not going to swim today. Really nice big animals. But next we're going to move on to back to the Aquaria pack. We've got 3 sharks. We got starting off, we got the tiger shark. So we got our requiem sharks here. So let's have a looky-loo at these guys and see if we can spot them. So really, really nice guys here. So these guys are a large macro predator. So these guys can get up to lengths of up to 5 meters long, or about 16.5 feet. And they typically live in tropical to temperate waters across the Central Pacific Ocean. And they get the name the tiger shark because they have all these kind of stripes there that make them kind of look like a tiger. So these guys, as I mentioned, they typically get as adult length about 3 to 4 meters long, or 10 feet to 13 feet, and they typically weigh between 175 to 635 kilograms, or 386 to 1,400 pounds, and they're quite dimorphic, so the females are on average quite a bit larger than the males, and mature females are often about 12 feet long, and males really get larger than that. Some exceptional females get about 5 meters, or about 16.5 feet, and larger males about 13 feet. And some particularly large sharks can get like 2,000 pounds or 900 kilograms. And one pregnant female was estimated to be about 5.5 meters and weighed about 1,500 kilograms, or 3,360 pounds. With some larger claims here and there, because obviously sharks, you want big shark stories, but they've never been verified. And they are among the largest extant sharks. They're only really behind the whale shark, the basking shark, and the great white shark, which 2 of those will be mentioned soon. They're kind of the second largest predatory shark after the great white shark, and they particularly join in size with some other species such as megamouths and Greenland sharks and things like that. And these guys have quite large mouths. They're pretty generous in that regard. They're much more like macro-predatory, that's the term. So they also have a nictitating membrane, which is a clear membrane over the eyelids that allows them to see and better protect their eyes. They also have a Taseum lucidum, which allows them to reflect light and helps their vision improve in low light conditions. And as I mentioned, their habitat, they're typically found in tropical and subtropical waters throughout the world. They're primarily nomadic, but they join around and go around the warmer currents. They can be found in Japan. They've been found as far north of Japan and south of New Zealand. They've even been reported over the Mediterranean. They've even been seen in the Gulf of Mexico. They're just very, very generous. As long as it's warm enough, they'll be there. Really, really wonderful fish. And these guys are macro-predatory, are apex predator, like pretty much anything they can get their mouths around. That includes small fish, cephalopods, jellyfish, sea mammals, sea snakes, dolphins, dugongs, turtles, the leatherback sea turtles, just anything that's big enough and yummy enough, they will eat it. They're very generalist. And they've even been known to scavenge off like dead whales and things like that, so that's really, really cool. And they often will use their quite interesting sense of smell and also their ability to kind of like sense electro pulses of animals around their body like a lot of sharks have. That's very interesting. Even been seen, these guys have had the stomach contents of things like rats, goats, sheep, horses, also even like license plates, baseballs, things like that in their stomachs. And their only predator is the killer whales, and killer whales kill them by turning them on their back, which causes them to kind of become immobile. It's called tonic immobility, and allows them to eat them. And we'll talk about their reproduction while finding these cute little baby sharks, see if we can find them. Look at these cute little mens here. So males will reach sexual maturity at about 2 to 2.9 meters long, or 7 to 9 feet long, and females at about 2.5 to 3.5 meters, or 8 to 11 feet. And they typically will get about 80 to 130 kilograms at that time. So females will typically mate every 3 years or so, and they breed through internal fertilization, so the male will insert one of his claspers into the female's cloaca, and they'll also bite each other in this process so they can hold on to each other. It's very, very kinky if you think about that. But the males mating in the northern hemisphere takes place during May and March, with birth between April and June the following year. In the southern hemisphere, it's November to December to early January, and the only species that is in its family that is ovoviviparous. That means the eggs hatch internally, and the young are born live when fully developed. And they actually are unique among sharks as they're able to employ embryotrophs, so that means they're able to nourish the young within their womb, and they gestate in the sacs where they fold and nourish them as well. And they're born up, they develop inside their body for about 16 months, and the babies are born in after that time, with litters ranging from 10 to 80 pups, and the newborn is generally about 51 to 76 centimeters long, or 20-30 inches long. And how long they live for is unknown, but it's believed they can be living longer for 12 years. That's pretty interesting. So in terms of conservation, I believe they're considered near threatened because of lots of issues such as being killed for their fish, flesh and liver, and also being lots of bycatch as well. And people like also fishing them for big game hunters as well, and big game fishing as well. And they're actually, in terms of their relationship to humans, they really bite humans, but they are responsible for a large share of shark bites, and are probably considered the most dangerous or the most common species to bite people. As they often visit shallow reefs and harbours where people are, you're less likely to get bitten by a great white shark because they prefer more open waters. Typically about 3 to 4 shark bites a year occur in Hawaii, which are really fatal. Also, there have been areas like about 5,000 sharks were culled for the tourist industry to try and protect them, but they've decided to make that illegal, so a lot of people now will just do like shark diving and things like that to protect so you can observe these sharks, and it's good ecotourism as well, because sharks are just really wonderful animals and really important to the ecosystem, and we love them. So really nice tiger shark there. So Jen, Ellie from Buffzoo, you did a wonderful job. And next we've got from our, I believe, 4th biggest shark to our 1st biggest shark, and we have got here the whale shark, also done by Leaf Jen and Buffzoo. So some really big sharks in here. Look at these wonderful big animals. Let's have a look at one of you other guys instead of... Let's have a look at you over here. Wonderful animals. So these guys are a slow-moving, filter-feeding carpet shark, and they're the largest living known fish that's alive right now, with the largest converted individuals getting about 18 meters long. So huge animals. And they actually hold the record for the largest animal in the animal kingdom that's not a non-mammalian vertebrate. So that's also pretty interesting. So in terms of their description, they have over 20 filter pads with over like 300 rows of tiny teeth that allows them to filter through water. They have a 12 meter long whale shark will have a mouth that's about 1.5 meters wide, and they have these quite flat faces that allows them to filter water through their gills and their teeth to allow them to get as many small animals through their body as possible. Also quite small eyes here, very, very cute, and they're covered with all these wonderful markings here that help them break their outline as well for protection. Really, really beautiful animals, if I do say so myself. So in terms of their size, as I mentioned, they're pretty much the largest non-cetacean in the world, and evidence suggests that there's sexual dimorphism, with males not growing quite as big as the females. And a study looked in this shark individuals for 2 years that it concludes that about 8 to 9 meters in length does not represent their maximum possible size. But the same study predicted that they get about 15 meters long, so that's probably their largest. And there's been lots of estimates for their size since we haven't really catched the largest individual yet. And it's believed that they can get between 14 and 21 meters long, with things like that, with males getting a little bit smaller just as the females get maturing and get larger. But there have been reports of like super large sharks, but most of them are kind of like a hearsay pretty much. While we're talking about these guys, let's talk about like a larger female here. Oh, this is female. Yeah, this is female. Really, really beautiful animals, and usually whale sharks are just so beautiful. These guys are found in tropical and temperate waters all across the world. They're primarily pelagic, since they like open water, but they prefer coastal and oceanic habitats. So they live in the open sea, but don't really live in deep areas or like diving deep. And they can be found to dive to depths of about 1,900 meters or about 6,200 feet. They are also migratory and have 2 distinct subpopulations: the Atlantic subpopulation and the Indo-Pacific population, which holds pretty much most of the shark population, where they usually roam around. And there have been several feeding aggregations found in the Persian Gulf, Darwin Island in the Galapagos, the Ngolo Reef in Australia, places like that. There's a lot of places that these guys have been known to congregate and feed. Let's have a look at this one, since this is our big girl. She's a wonderful big gal, isn't she? Wonderful big shark. But in terms of growth and reproduction, we really don't know too much about these sharks. They're very poorly understood in that regard. In terms of dating, it suggests that these guys may have reach about an age of 50 years old for like a 10-year-old 10-meter long female and a 9-meter long male. So just they could live between 80 to 130 years, so quite big and long-lived. And it suggests that males will grow faster than females at an earlier stage of life, but reach a smaller maximum size. And There have been lots of evidence that believe the smallest living specimens have been found in the Philippines, the youngest shark getting about 38 centimeters long or 15 inches. But yeah, we really just don't know much about their reproduction. They're so wide-ranging across the world, enigmatic, we don't know where exactly they breed. But it's estimated there's some about Philippines. But these guys are really, really large filter feeders, so they're one of 3 known filter feeding species of shark. That includes the basking and the megamouth shark. They feed on plankton, copepods, small fish, krill, eggs, larvae from small animals, things like that, and fish and squid. So just really small things that they use their large mouths and gill rakers to filter that out of the water so they can swallow that down. And they typically, a juvenile whale shark will eat about 21 pounds of plankton per 21 kilograms or 46 pounds of plankton per day. And these guys will just swim across the water gently, just open their mouths open and just take what they can. Really wonderful. And these guys are very, very friendly. Even though they're very large, they pose no threat to people other than accidentally hurting you, because they are not going to eat you at all. But it's suggested that you guys, if you want to dive with these guys, try and keep your distance, because that can really stress the sharks out. So you want to avoid that as much as you can. But they've been seen to be friendly with divers in many places, ranging from pretty much all across the world. In terms of their conservation status, they are considered endangered because of things like bycatch, fisheries, vessel strikes, and also their slow breeding. That means if there's decrease in their population, it's very hard to recover it back. But it's believed that also some oil spills have really hurt their populations, and hundreds are killed every year illegally because of shark fin soup and also for their skins and oil. So that's also very not bad. But they're also one of the largest fish kept in aquariums, and there's been some aquariums that manage to keep them, such as the Georgia Aquarium, also the Orinoco Aquarium, and there's been lots of attempts, but there seem to be some that are doing okay now. But the only place outside Asia is the Georgia Aquarium in the United States, Atlanta, and I think that's really, really cool. With some dying soon, but it's been saved from like fishing trade and stuff. But yeah, some really, really cool sharks here. I'm a big fan. So big and beautiful. I'm a big fan of you big sharks. And yeah, Jen, Leaf, and Buffzoo did a wonderful job with these guys. And last but not least, we have got another shark. We've got everyone's favorite big bad. We've got Jaws. We have got the great white shark. And this is the Frontier model from Jurassic World Evolution 2, I believe. Really came out wonderfully. So there's a wonderful big shark here. So we have got the great white shark. Yeah, okay. Also known as the white pointer, or just the white shark, or just the great white shark. These guys are a large mackerel shark that can be found in coastal waters across pretty much everywhere in the world, and they're very notable for their size. Large females get about 6 meters long, or about 20 feet long, and their lengths of about and get a little under. They get 4,200 pounds to 5,000 pounds, or about a little under 2 tons to a little over 2 tons. So they're quite big animals. However, most adults are smaller. Males are typically measure about 11 to 13 feet long, or 3.4 to 4 meters, and females about 4.6 to 4.9 meters, or 15 to 16 feet long on average. But according to the 2014 study, it seems that the lifespan of a great white shark can be up to 70 years or more, and which is well above the estimates. That makes it one of the longest lived cartilaginous fishes, which obviously doesn't really compete with animals such as Greenland sharks, which can live up to like 450 years. But according to the same study, these guys take about 26 years to reach sexual maturity, and females for 23 years old to make offspring, which can be very detrimental for the populations because it's slow breeding. And great white sharks can swim speeds of about 25 kilometers an hour, or about 16 miles per hour, for short bursts, and depths of about 1,200 meters, or 3,900 feet. So, yeah. As I mentioned, they're found pretty much everywhere. You can find them. As long as it's not too cold, you will find great white sharks. And these guys typically feed on fur seals, cetaceans, other sharks, large fish. They're pretty generous in that regard, but they seem to have a preference for marine mammals, especially as they get older. As you can see, let's see if we can find the other ones. Let's have a look at the other one. Where is the other one? It's probably the male. A wonderful guy here. So, as I mentioned, their size, I already mentioned that. There's been reports of larger individuals, but it's often hearsay and people being, oh, scary. And these guys kind of have a sixth sense as well, because they are able to detect the electromagnetic fields emitted by living animals, so they can detect animals if they're moving weird. They can say, oh, there's an injured animal, go see it. And they also are able to participate in something called gigantothermy. So that means they are able to kind of raise its core temperature a little bit higher than the ecosystem it's in, or the water it's in. So they're able to live in slightly cooler waters because of that. And it's believed to maybe be an evolutionary advantage because a lot of the larger marine mammals tend to live in slightly cooler water, which is pretty cool. They also have a pretty strong bite force of about 3 tons, I believe, and they could exert a bite force of about 18,000 newtons, so pretty interesting. And these guys are believed to have quite a social structure. So it seems they have a dominance hierarchy based on the size, sex, and the squatters' rights as well. So females dominate males because they are larger, with larger sharks dominating female sharks, and the residents will dominate the newcomers. So it's kind of like a pecking order kind of thing. And actually, one of the few sharks that will often like lift their head out of the water to spy hop, and they'll even jump out of the water as well, since often they're hunting for animals that are probably near the surface sometimes. And as I mentioned, they're carnivorous. They'll feed on large fish, whales, dolphins, pinnipeds, seals, sea lions, sea turtles, otters, seabirds, pretty much anything they can get their mouths around. That's good. They've also been seen scavenging on whales. They eat young whales, bony fish as well. Very, very generalist. And in terms of their reproduction, they reach, as I mentioned, about 23 years to sexual maturity, and the females will produce baby at about, about 33 years old. I'm trying to find the baby. Where's the baby? Where is the baby? There he is. Have a look at the baby. There she is. Really, really cute little guys here. So, these guys, little is known about their habits, but they seem to be shark matings have been observed around New Zealand, so that's pretty cool. And they seem to be ovoviviparous. That means the egg develops and hatches in the uterus, and they develop like in there before they're born. They have an 11-month gestation period, and the shark pups will have powerful jaws that develop in the first month. And the onboard sharks will practice an oophagy, which means they'll eat the ova produced by the mother, and they usually are born in the spring or summer. And a large number of pups have been recorded, with about 14 pups to a single mother that measured about 4.5 meters long, and she was killed in Taiwan in 2019, which sucks, but at least we got to learn something from her. But yeah, these guys are pretty safe from most threats, other than killer whales and people. They seem to be doing quite well. In fact, a lot of sharks populations have been kind of wiped out by killer whales sometimes, especially like a lot of the great white sharks that you see, like the old Jaws ones that'll jump out. Those are wiped out by killer whales that moved in, and they seem to have not recovered since. But these guys are responsible by far the largest shark bites, with 272 documented unprovoked bites on humans since 2012, which could be for a few different reasons, because of them thinking seals are weird or things like that, thinking like seals being more adapted to large prey, things like that, or eating from the surface where humans are normally meant to be. And this kind of create this perception of them being a man-eater, though there's very few confirmed reports of them actually eating people. They don't seem to like eating people. We're kind of too bony for them. They typically like fatty marine mammals and things like that. They don't like to eat people too much. But this has caused some major issues for their conservation, because people see them as an evil shark that'll kill everyone, even though you're more likely to get killed by a cow or a New Yorker than a shark. If you're going to buy that logic, we should kill all New Yorkers rather than killing sharks, because you're more likely to get bitten by a New Yorker than a shark, which is a very funny fact. But this has caused lots of large culls, which has been very bad for these guys since they take so much time to recover. But luckily, people have been trying to learn to live with these sharks, creating all sorts of new shark control technologies that kind of keep them away from coastal areas, or keep them away from areas where people will be swimming, so they can just keep them safe as well. They've also been known to attack boats. And in terms of captivity, there have been some attempts, but the most attempts have, prior to 1981, there had been no shark in captivity longer than 11 days. But the Monterey Bay Aquarium kind of started the trend of trying to keep them, and they've managed to keep them for a few months or so, but they get too big and they want to eat marine mammals rather than fish, and they just not really well suited to captivity. But obviously you can have them in their planet zoos. Though it'd be really cool to try and figure that out and try and create a good aquarium for these guys, so that'd be very, very expensive, and probably only the largest aquariums could do it, but still really cool. Really hard to keep because they are dietary print. You have to feed them mammals, you have to make sure it doesn't get stressed in captivity, and also it's very unlikely to be feasible, but I think it's just cool to talk about these guys. And shark tourism is another big thing. Lots of cage diving has been kind of across the world, like South Africa, South Australia, New Zealand, California. A lot of that, they'll often do that, and it's been pretty good for tourism. And that's something I would love to do. I'd love to dive with the great white. They're just such beautiful animals. But yeah, in terms of their conservation status, it's not unsure, but they're typically considered vulnerable, I believe, because of hunting by commercial fisheries, also bycatch, hunting for their shark fins and stuff like that. They're considered vulnerable, and also it's because of their slow breeding. So, female shark taken out can be a massive hit to the population, which sucks. But it seems like most places they are considered vulnerable or endangered, so there are protections going in place. So yeah, really, really wonderful sharks, and I hope that we see them in the future. Just beautiful animals. The largest predatory fish alive today. Really, really wonderful animals. So yeah, Jen Lee from Buffzoo, you're doing a wonderful job. You're really starting off with a bang with this aquarium pack, and I hope to see many, many more animals to come, especially whales and cetaceans and all sorts of cool fish that you'll be showing off here. So yeah, I think this would be a great place to end today with our wonderful frontier sharks. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified upload anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.